here's the contents of what I'll be speaking about. We'll go over the traditional 3 R's plus, I call it, the guidelines of what you can and cannot put in your bins at home, resources for places you can take recycling somewhere in your community. I'll cover the 2021 event dates, which we've just published, and also talk about the recycling centers, the green guide, and the new solid waste plan, and some outreach options. Yeah. Well, it was working in our test, but anyway. So we all know what the 3 R's are: reduce, reuse, recycle. We've heard those over and over, but I always like to add the first and foremost important word at the beginning, and that's rethink. We need to be rethinking our resources and how we utilize them, rethinking our purchases to begin with. How can we shop and not have as much garbage? Years ago, I did a zero waste project in my home to see how low could I go with the creation of garbage. And I was able to, over the period of 30 days, I had 4.5 pounds of trash. And that was mostly plastic wrappers and little things that there's just no recycling options for. You couldn't recycle, couldn't compost, that sort of thing. But with consciousness and looking at the way that you're shopping, you can really make a huge impact. What I encourage people to do is, this is a homework assignment, is to, after this presentation, go and look in your trash can and just have a glance in it every day, actually, and see what is it that there are a number of those things in there, whatever it is. A chip packet, for example. If you see a lot of those, think, how can I reduce the number of those that I'm putting in my trash every week? Well, maybe I can buy a large bag of potato chips and then just take a little bit out each time, or something, instead of all the individually wrapped. That sort of thinking is so important. Also, just looking at, there's so many other R words like repair and refashion, just things that, repair is a big movement again right now, because so many people, we used to repair things, but now it's just such a throwaway culture. And I know I'm speaking probably to the choir here, but a lot of things can be repaired rather than replaced. And so those are the kinds of things that I encourage you all to consider. So rethink, then reduce, and reuse, and repair, and then recycle. Recycling is not the solution. It is something in the cycle of things, that we can do to help, but certainly not the solution. The solution, in my mind, is to rethink. And then also I add in a word that does not start with R, but is equally important, and that's compost. We in the industry, in the waste and materials management industry, we've been looking, in the last 10 years, it's really picked up, but at this huge piece of what I call the garbage pie. If you look at how much of the garbage is made up of food scraps, for example, the amount that's going to the landfill is around 15% of what's going to the landfill is food scraps that could otherwise have been composted and the nutrients returned to the soil. The other issue with food scraps and other organics like landscape waste, yard waste, leaves, branches, etc., when those go in the landfill, they create methane, which is a very potent greenhouse gas, more potent over time than carbon dioxide is. So it's really important to keep the food scraps out of the landfill. Luckily, here in Illinois, we do have the yard waste landfill ban, so it has to be composted. And now we are working on solutions for residential food scrap composting. Of course, backyard composting is the very best thing you can do if you have the space, because there's no transport included. Then you're just putting it in, turning it into nice soil amendment, and then hopefully using it on your garden. But there are several communities now in Kane County and also in the greater Chicago region and throughout Illinois. We have a total of, I think, 51 communities now have curbside food scrap collection offered with either combined with their yard waste in the same cart or bag, or as a separate collection. And that's really a wonderful thing. That's really something that I'm personally proud of and excited about working as I do with the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition. And that's an organization whose mission is to help build infrastructure and to advance food scrap composting in Illinois. So if you're interested in more about that, I won't spend a lot of time tonight because I'm going to talk more about recycling, but please look up the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition online. And the website is illinoiscomposts.org. So yeah, go ahead and have a look at that if you're interested. Also on the Kane County website, if you scroll down to the main homepage, you'll get to food scrap composting in Kane County. There's a link there that links to all the different communities in Kane County that do offer that currently. This was my story about my zero waste project. I'm not going to go into it too much further, but part of the way that I did that was I used my own shopping bags, net vegetable bags, recycled everything possible. I had, all of my own containers I would take and buy in bulk, and I composted everything. And then this is my bag of trash after 1 month, 4 pounds of trash. Okay, so getting into the recycling guidelines. This is a poster that I created with, a group that I was a part of created this poster a couple of years ago to try to make it easy for people to see in a glance what is recyclable and what's not. Because, and I'll just scroll down real quickly here, this is what the web page looks like with the details of what you can and cannot recycle, and do you flatten them or not? Do you put the lids on or not? This is a portion of the page that goes on and on down. It's just an example for those of you with inquiring minds who want the minute details. They're here and they're available for you on the Kane County website. But because most people just want to know when they got the thing in their hand and they want to throw it in a bin, where to put it, we made this poster. So I'm going to go over these guidelines tonight more specifically, but don't be thrown off by the fact that it's quite simplistic and does not have all the details, because the point was to try to just make it accessible for everybody. And again, I want to encourage you not to be discouraged if you hear something tonight on this talk that makes you go, oh no, I've been doing it wrong for years or whatever. That's okay. That's why we do these kinds of presentations, to help you understand what can and cannot go in the bins, and you'll improve after this. And I also encourage you, homework assignment number 2, to share the information that you learned tonight. Like if you have one of those moments and you think, oh, nobody knows that, like I didn't know that boxes had to be flattened to go in the recycling, then share that information with someone who doesn't know that. Because every individual action does make a difference and has an impact. So here we go into the guidelines. Sorry, it's kind of not exactly centering where it should. On the poster, it does say we want the containers clean and empty, and you can replace the lids and caps. That's super simple. It just is the easiest way. The caps are so small that they don't really make it through the recycling sorting facility unless they're attached to a container. We do want them empty and clean. I won't go too far into it, but you don't need to use excessive water. Just make sure they're rinsed clean. They don't need to be spotless. And then the other big key note on the side of the poster is to make sure that you're putting all of your recyclable materials into the bin loose. We do not want the recyclable materials, the bottles and things in plastic bags, tied or not tied, in the cart. We don't want plastic bags in the cart, period, whether they've got something in them or they're empty. So that's something that a lot of people don't know. So if you do collect it in your home in a plastic bag, when you get out to your recycling cart, just tip it upside down, knock all the recycling out of it, and then throw that plastic bag in the trash or reuse it. What I do is I use paper bags, because then I can just tip the stuff out of the paper bag and then throw the paper bag in as well. All depends what kind of system you have in your house there for collection. Okay, so paper is pretty straightforward. Cardboard, of course, is recyclable, and yes, the boxes need to be flattened and not just stomped on so they're kind of mashed flat. Just they need to get a scissors or something, cut that tape, and then just fold it flat and put it in your bin. If they're too big, you might fold it in half again, but they do need to be flat in order to be sorted properly at the sorting facilities. And office paper, newspapers, phone books, paper egg cartons, all of that stuff can be recycled. Magazines, glossy mailers that you get, as long as they are not plastic coated, can go in. Metal is pretty straightforward, just metal cans. So we want steel and aluminum cans, and then foil. And this picture on the poster, unfortunately, was one of the clip arts we could get, but it's a little misleading because that sheet of foil is not correctly prepared. For foil, we want it as clean as possible. So if you've used it for cooking, do take a cloth and wipe it off as much as you can, and then ball it up into like a baseball sized ball. Don't scrunch it too tight, just loosely ball it, because that's how it will be sorted properly. It has to be dimensional, because if it's thin and flat, it is often missorted as paper, and we don't want that. Glass, bottles and jars only. If it is a glass drinking glass, no. If it is a piece of a window, no. If it's glass beads, no. If it's a glass figurine, no. It has to be a bottle or a jar. Containers only. And again, as you can see in that, you can put the lids back on. And then cartons are recyclable. And that's something that, has been the case for about 10 years now or more, that cartons are acceptable, but a lot of people don't know that. So I'm just reminding you all there that, milk cartons, the soup boxes, all the little, what we used to call wax cartons, those are recyclable. You don't need to flatten them. You can give them a little bit of a squeeze to save room in your bin, but generally speaking, we don't want any of the containers to be flattened, because again, then they may be mistaken as paper or just not make it through the sorting process. We want them nice and round and dimensional. All right, now I will get into the plastic piece, because it's the one that's always the most confusing and I get the most questions about. So there may be some still coming up at the end, but I'll try to cover it as simply as possible. And this group that I worked with, the task force that was made up of statewide stakeholders, decided that the clearest way to explain which plastic objects were recyclable was to say, well, they're containers only, and they're usually household product containers, food or drink or cleaning product containers. So containers only is a good clue. If what you have in your hand is not a container, then it probably, even if it's made of plastic, even if it has the little triangle with the number in it, it's not recyclable, unless it is a container in the shape of a bottle, tub, jug, or jar. And that's the guideline. That's all you need to know. If you're holding a plastic object in your hand and you're thinking, I'm looking for an example here, like this. You're thinking, is that recyclable? And this one doesn't have a number, so you'd probably assume not. But some things like that, a child's toy or something, it'll have like a plastic, it'll have the little chasing triangle symbol with a number, which is telling you what kind of resin it's made out of, but unfortunately does not truly mean that it's recyclable. So if it's a bottle, tub, jug, or jar, put it in. If it is not one of those things, if it's a plastic fork, it's a plastic plate, no. So that's my advice. Forget the numbers, just look for the shapes. And that works 99% of the time, 99 point something. Okay, so I don't have a screen that shows the chat right now, but again, we'll take some questions at the end. So these are the no's. And this was really hard when I was working with the state task force, because there was a humongous list of things that should not go in the recycling bin that the sorting facilities find in the recycling bins. So we had to narrow it down to the top offenders and the ones that either harm the equipment or just cause lots of problems, or are otherwise highly recyclable if you drop them off somewhere else and don't put them in your curbside cart. So this is what we've ended with. plastic bags are the highest offender and cause all kinds of havoc at the sorting facilities because they get wrapped around all the machinery, making it look like a piñata, and they've got to shut down operations twice a day to go out there and manually chop the plastic bags out of the equipment with knives. It's really something that we try as educators to get out there. No plastic bags, no plastic wrap. However, if you keep your plastic bags clean, dry, and empty, you can take them to grocery stores for recycling. And now I'm sure lots of you are saying during COVID, they've stopped doing that. Well, I know for a fact that Jewel Osco has committed to continuing the program. I've seen some Lowe's that still have their recycling bins out for plastic bags. So just look around. The Jewel Osco in St. Charles on Randall Road for sure is taking them. I've spoken to the manager there. No big items, electronics, woods, basketball hoops, propane tanks, pieces of barbecue or pieces of car. None of that stuff should be going in your curbside cart, which is, again, mainly just for paper and containers. And there are lots of other options for recycling those things, which you can see on the Kane County website. And then just quickly, shredded paper used to be acceptable in the curbside cart as long as you prepared it properly. And now the haulers, during this task force meetings that we had, they said they just can't deal with the shredded paper because it just gets loose and it acts like confetti inside the sorting facility. And they have no way to really collect it once it gets loose. So unfortunately, it's not easy to get rid of. You can bring it to the Kane County recycling events and recycle it with books. Not when we do the shredding events. If you have pre-shredded paper that you've shredded at home, you recycle it with our books at the events. Otherwise, if you just want to save up your documents, you can bring them to our shredding events and get them shredded. I'll talk about those events in a moment. No tanglers. So tanglers are things that are long and skinny and get tangled around the equipment. So none of those things should be going in there. And then clothing. It's amazing how much clothing they find in the recycling. And really, it is very reusable and or recyclable if you take it to the proper drop-off location. And the Kane County recycling centers do now accept clothing and textiles and shoes. So that's the proper way to get rid of clothing. And then no food, no liquid, no diapers, batteries, needles, other hazardous waste. Obviously, to some, that stuff should not be going in your recycling bin, but they find a lot of it. So please take note of that. There's other options for batteries too, and for sharps. But all that information can be found on the county website. But for sake of time, I won't go into too much detail there. This screen is based on just frequent questions that I've received. So again, the caps and lids can go back on the empty, clean containers. Clean the containers, just rinse them to recycle. Cardboard and paper should be flat. And here is a tip for, these photographs were from Christmas, where I collected a bunch of boxes, out of the alley that were just stacked up there in holes still and not folded down. And then I flattened them all, and then I put them in the recycling bin. So you can see how this process works. I wanted to talk about the how to recycle symbol as well, because you will notice this type of, what's the word I'm looking for, advice on products now, on the packaging. You'll see it on the back of cereal boxes. You'll see it on the back of your Amazon delivery packaging. And it's really helpful because this company, how to recycle.info, has done their research. They have looked into, is this really recyclable? And if so, what if it's a hybrid, like you've got a paper box and a plastic wrap and a plastic tray inside this packaging, and they all are different. So they've really taken the time to verify. So you can trust this and follow these directions, which is excellent, because if you just take, a lot of companies like to say their packaging is recyclable, even though it's not. That happens a lot. So just be careful. There's a lot of greenwashing out there, and people who say, oh yeah, those little tiny snap off plastic pieces, sure, put them in recycling. Well, no, that's never going to get recycled. So, just look for the how to recycle, and also feel free to call me anytime if you have questions about specific things. And then I've already gone over the plastic containers only, bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars. The question I get there is, what does tub mean? And that is a dimensional container that has a wide mouth, has a bottom and sides that are taller than an inch. So like margarine, yogurt, sour cream, those are tubs. Also, the tubs you get from delis and grocery stores. Don't want to get into too much detail. The plastics always are just so time consuming. The other thing that I get a question about is clamshells. So when you go to the deli or you get cookies and they're in those plastic clamshells that are connected, those are recyclable because they are like two tubs put together. More tips. And these kind of, some of this, I may be repeating myself, but basically the plastic gloves and face masks and wipes that we're using with COVID are not recyclable. Those are all going to have to go in the trash, unfortunately, unless hopefully you can find ways to reuse, use cloth wipes and wash them, use cloth masks and wash, sort of thing. So also with plastic, black plastic is not recyclable because it's not recyclable because it is not marketable, black plastic, and it's also not easy to be sorted out because the laser identifiers that identify what kind of plastic it is and then blows it into the right spot can't see through the black plastic to identify what type of resin it is. And I'm going to pause for just a second here to kind of repeat a little bit of that. What is it that makes something actually recyclable? It has to be able to be sorted using the equipment that we currently have in our material recovery facilities, the sorting facilities. And two, it has to be able to be marketed. There has to be someone out there that's taking that material and then turning it into something new. If the object does not meet those two criteria, and both of them, then it's just not recyclable currently in our system as it exists. And so that's, why there's so much confusion around the number being on there and then it's still not being recycling. Well, maybe it's because it can't be sorted. Maybe it's because there's no market for it. And black plastic has nothing going for it there. So unfortunately, black plastic is trash. All right, no flexible plastic packaging. Again, that can go in, a lot of it can go in with the grocery store plastic bag recycling program. And here's some more pictures from my Christmas recycling efforts, where you get all these bubbles, the big long lines of pillow full of air. You just have to cut those and flatten them out. And then this middle picture is a picture of those all flattened, and the envelopes that have labels, you have to cut the labels off and throw those away, but the plastic can be recycled. The Amazon, you can just see the corners of the Amazon envelopes there in that middle picture. If you cut the labels off, those are also recyclable in the grocery store drop-off programs. And there's more information about that on the Kane County website too, that will lead you to the website that talks about plastic bag recycling. And the link is, I think, plastic bags. All right. The other things that I like to point out are that cups, lids, straws, and utensils, plastic, are not recyclable. We get a lot of those in the recycling, but they need to just go in the trash, unfortunately, or avoid them if you can. No styrofoam goes in your curbside cart, but you can take that to DART or to the Kane County Recycling Extravaganza in July. Frozen food boxes are not acceptable in your curbside cart because they are a type of paper that's been impregnated with resin-based, like plastic is inside of the paper. They've combined them into a hybrid, making it not recyclable. And then paper towels, napkins, paper plates, those are also found in there because people think paper, but usually they're soiled. And then napkins and tissues are so fine that the fibers are so small they can't really be recycled into new paper. So, but you can compost these things if you have that ability. And then again, batteries, we do not want those in the curbside cart, but you can recycle those at a variety of locations throughout Kane County. You can look on the website for that information also. And there are tons of opportunities for all these items listed here for drop-offs, places you can take them to get them recycled, even though you can't put them in your curbside cart. And also I wanted to just give a heads up to you all for a company that's called TerraCycle. I know a lot of you have probably heard of that already, but TERRA Cycle. And just look that up. This photo on this slide here is an example of some of the products they have, and they're called zero waste boxes. And they can take all these kinds of weird plastics that you can't put in your curbside bin. So have a look at that. If you're a really adamant recycler and you're aiming for zero waste, TerraCycle can help you get a lot closer. I'm not going to go into detail about these things listed here because all of that information is available online and in the green guide. So, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Here's the 2021 event schedule for Kane County's events. These are all going to be at 540 South Randall Road in St. Charles, our normal recycling location at the county traffic court there, right across from the fairgrounds. We have two events that are going to be off-site, and that's the hazardous waste on June 5th and the pumpkin composting on November 6th. But otherwise, they're all there at the traffic court in St. Charles. These are the dates. And we're taking electronics, clothing, and books on our regular second Saturday of the month dates. And then this year, we're actually doing separate document shredding events that'll be just document shredding. Have such a huge turnout for these that we're serving, you know, about 1,000 cars in 4 hours for the document shredding. And with those, we do have shredding trucks on site that you just pull up in your car with your boxes of documents. Our volunteers unload for you, tip them into the carts. Once the carts are full, they get tipped into the back of the truck and are cross-shredded as they enter the truck, meaning they're chopped into little tiny confetti-sized pieces. So very secure. It's a free service for our residents. And actually, I know I'm speaking to a lot of McHenry people and some Kane County people, but we don't check IDs, but we do ask where you're from. And the document shredding does have quite a cost. So that in the future, just be aware that this is for Kane County residents, the document shredding. The other events would be open to anybody because they don't have such a high cost for the county to provide. The hazardous waste event on June 5th is going to be co-hosted by DuPage County and City of Aurora, and the Illinois EPA is paying the bill on that. So that's wonderful. What else do I want to point out? The extravaganza is July 10th this year, when we include everything we possibly can, including bikes and styrofoam and batteries and fluorescent bulbs, and maybe some other things. Once we get closer, check online for the full list. I'll also just point out quickly, you'll see in green, there are 3 dates that we'll be doing paint recycling. And that's really, we've traditionally done latex paint recycling, and there is a per can cost for the resident to pay when you get there. And that's for large gallon cans of latex, liquid latex paint, and it will get recycled as paint and reused as paint. The other new piece of that program is that we are working with a company that does spray can paint recycling. And so you can bring spray cans now, and those are $1 a can to recycle. And again, they get the paint recycled and they get the metal cans recycled. So it's a wonderful program. And it's a great way to get rid of, if you've got a whole ton of paint in your basement or garage, get rid of it all at once, hassle-free, and know that you've done the most environmentally conscious thing that you can. And I'm happy to answer questions about the events. I'll move on for now. We have 2 permanent recycling centers in Kane County. One is in West Dundee and one is on Fabian Parkway in Batavia. And then the Star is our event location. These, you can see the hours here listed for both sites. We have Saturday hours at the Fabian Parkway location now, which is exciting. We're piloting that, so it may not stick around, but we're just, especially during December through March, when we have no events, we thought we should offer a weekend option for people to drop off. And we accept electronics, books, clothing and textiles, and at Fabian, we also take scrap metal. And there's full list of details on all of those things on the county website, like a whole list of what electronic items we take, etc. And then the green guide is full of information. And if you wanted a paper copy, just give me a call and I can put you on the mailing list so you get that each January when it comes out. Here on the screen, you'll see 2 guides. One was the 2020 guide, and that's what we put out last year. It's a 16-page guide full of information. This year, when we started to look at publishing, really not very much had changed. And I heard Kim saying a lot of hers had changed for McHenry, and they're producing a new guide now. But for Kane County, not a lot had changed. So we just decided to do a 1-page supplement. And it's a trifold brochure, front and back, of information of the changes that occurred from 2020 till now. So you kind of need to use them in conjunction with each other. You need the 2020 guide as well, because it's the one that has everything. And then this has some tips on let's see, COVID, and also just updated information on the drop-off locations and the recycling event dates. So you can pick those up at a number of places in the community. Also, you can ask me and I'll mail them to you. But I always encourage people that if you have the ability if you have access to the internet, and always look at the website, because it's always updated. These we publish once a year in January, and then they're frozen in time. So please do depend on the website for the most up-to-date information. This is a lot of words on this slide. This is an old slide that I forgot to update. I apologize. But my main point here is that the Kane County just recently adopted our latest solid waste plan. And this is the cover. It's a comprehensive document that is a guidance document for Kane County Recycles, for what our status is currently and what improvements we wish to make to the recycling programs over time. And this is a 5-year plan. So within the next 5 years, there's a number of recommendations for things to accomplish. Some of them are pulled out in this plan. I'm just going to try to get to the right page here. You can get this online as well under solid waste plan on the Kane County Recycles website, but there's a page in the front that shows you what the main recommendations are, and that's kind of just an easy read if anyone is interested. And there is an executive summary that'll fill you in under 3 minutes if you just want a quick little taste. Kane County Connects is our online newsletter and blog, and I submit an article to Rick Nagel with the Kane County Connects every week, sometimes every 2 weeks, but usually every week. A lot of you probably read those. That may be where you saw the announcement for tonight's talk. But it goes two ways. I just wanted to say I really appreciate that I'm able to get the recycling tips out there through this avenue, but I also would like to invite you, if you have community events happening or you're involved in anything that you want to publicize, contact Rick and put in a story. They're always looking for local stories. And so again, this is more applicable to the Kane County attendees here tonight more than McHenry, but please check it out. And you can also subscribe to the newsletter to just get it once a week instead of every day. So that's, again, options there. And homework assignment. Again, reminder to spread the word. So please share the information that you've learned tonight, anything new or something that surprised you, share that with your friends and family, because then the impact goes even further. Check out the website, please, and feel free to call me anytime if you have questions about recycling. I'm always there for you.